In this episode of the Live Unrestricted podcast, we are talking about 3 shockingly simple ways to enjoy holiday food without guilt, without losing control, and without it turning into a 2-week-long binge fest. You are going to want to listen to this episode, so let's get into it. Welcome to the Live Unrestricted podcast, a show where you'll learn how to heal your relationship with food and your body so that you can focus your time and energy on more important things like your personal growth. I'm your host, Sabrina Magna, food freedom coach, and my mission is to help make your life happier and healthier without stress, overwhelm, or guilt about food. If you love the show, please do go out and share it. And if you're looking for support with your relationship with food, details about my programs are in the show notes. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump in. Hi, my friend. How we doing? I know that we are more than mid-December, and I am doing a lot of episodes around how to handle food and diet culture during this time of the year, because the reality is that this time of the year is particularly challenging and you're navigating a lot no matter what. There's like the financial strain of the holidays and you're around more family and that can bring on a lot. And so I want to be here to support you through everything that's coming up for you when it comes to eating and body image. And this episode, I know, is going to be incredibly helpful if you're feeling some apprehension or anxiety as we head into the bulk of the holiday season and eating. And we're really talking about 3 surprisingly simple things that you can do so that you can enjoy all holiday food without guilt or anxiety or losing control and getting into that F it mode where it's like, F it, I've already fallen off track, so might as well just binge during the entire holiday season and get back on track in January. I know that it might be a really familiar pattern that you're used to, but the reality is that it doesn't feel good. I know it doesn't feel good because I used to do that every December and then get back on track in January. And I think back on how I would feel during like my family brunches, and I would just eat so much that I had a stomach ache for the rest of the day. And then we would be opening presents, but I couldn't focus because I felt like crap. And so I just want this holiday season to feel like any other day. And one idea that I really hope is going to come across and is going to really get ingrained in your mind as you listen to this episode is this. So really hear me. It doesn't have to be as hard as you think it is. I know that when you struggle with disordered eating and you have a lot of fear around food and weight gain, it feels incredibly deep, like it consumes you, and it can feel like there is no way out and that you can't change and it's going to be really hard. But I promise you, when I was creating the outline for this episode, the thought that I kept having was, oh my goodness, if people just do this, if they just took the time to do this, they would realize that it can be so much easier than they think to have a completely different experience around food this holiday season. And I really, really mean that. This is someone who used to think that this was so incredibly hard. The problem is that we tend to think, because these issues with food are complex, that's the solution has to be complex as well. But the reality is that when we can slow things down and we can remove ourselves from the problem and we can create distance and really look at the big picture, things can change really quickly. So I'm going to get right into these 3 things you have to. I'm not going to say you have to, because you can do whatever you want with your life, but I really recommend that you do all three of these steps. And when you do, I want you to report back to me. I want you to send me a message on Instagram and let me know how your holidays went and how different they were when you did these three things. All right. So I hope you're listening. Let's get into the first one. The first thing you're going to do is you are going to get clear on what is a trigger for you. So this is important because everyone is different. You might struggle more with overeating and losing control, okay? Whereas someone else might not struggle as much with overeating, but for them, they feel a lot of guilt, fear, and anxiety because they're around like all of these different foods that they don't usually allow themselves to eat. So for that person, it might be, I just want to be able to enjoy these foods instead of feeling like I have to restrict them and then watch everyone else being able to eat the desserts while I'm not allowing myself to do that. So everyone's going to be really different. And I think the biggest problem I see is that there's so much like black and white blanket advice that gets shared on the internet. And I mean, that's normal because it's like these 10-second clips that are supposed to catch your attention. But everyone is going to be different. Everyone's going to have different challenges. So what's really, really important, and I've been talking about this with Luke lately because he has been finally allowing me to help him more with his intuitive eating. He goes through these phases where he's a little bit more stubborn and he wants to just try to figure it out on his own. And then other times where he finally opens his eyes to the fact that he lives with a literal intuitive eating coach who does this for a living. And I have to let him do his thing, right? I have to let him come to me when he feels ready to get some help and support, because I know from behavior change that people aren't going to change until they feel ready to. So I'm not going to go and impose my will onto him. So I, as a coach with a coach brain, have been exerting a lot of patience through this process. But all that to say, he finally came to me and said, okay, I would like some help and support. And then I was like, yes, finally. So we've been talking a lot about getting curious about what is triggering for you. What are the reasons that you are struggling with nighttime overeating or feeling like once you start, you can't stop? And it's been super interesting because his thought processes, the beliefs and the thoughts that are triggering his overeating are things that I didn't necessarily used to struggle with. And he's doing certain behaviors throughout the day that are leading to the overeating at night as well. Those are some things that I can relate to. So it's really important to get to know yourself and what your specific challenges, what your specific triggers are. And what I recommend is that you actually sit down with a pen and a piece of paper and you do some reflection. I know that doesn't sound great because then you have to use your brain. And I know that sometimes we're like, I don't want to use my brain. I don't want to think, especially when you're tired and you have so many other things to do. I really, really, really get that. However, if you want to have a different experience around food this holiday season, this will be one of the most important things that you can do. Whenever I am feeling stuck in any area of my life, let me tell you, I make this mistake all the time. So I know after having repeated this mistake enough times to do something different, what I'll try to do is I'll try to fix or improve that area of my life while just continuing to live life on autopilot. right? So I won't actually slow down, take a step back, take a step away from the problem, and give myself actual time to reflect on what's working and what's not working. And so, what do you think happens? I end up getting stuck in that problem for weeks or months. And when it's months, and then I finally realize, okay, Sabrina, you're going to take the afternoon, you're going to go to a coffee shop, and you are going to reflect on this. And you're going to figure out what's working, what's not working, and what needs to change. And when I do that, I am able to have more clarity and more of a plan, an action plan on how to fix that problem than I did after months of just trying to fix it while also just living life on autopilot. So what I'm saying here is if you need to take an hour to really sit with yourself, I recommend that you get out of your environment that you are used to being in. So maybe you go to a coffee shop. Maybe you go to someone else's house. If you are one of the lucky few who lives somewhere that is warm in the winter, then maybe you go outside at a park, in nature, something that sparks your creativity, sparks your inspiration, and allows you to get out of your thinking brain and just letting things come through to you. I know this sounds woo, and I know this might sound like advice you've never gotten, but it works. It really, really does. And it's counterintuitive, but take the time and really get clear on what is a trigger for you, what is challenging for you. And my friend, you will find more than one thing. You might end up writing a bullet point list that has like 20 bullet points on it. So I'll give you some examples so that you have an idea of what direction this might go on. So one of them might be dysregulation. So maybe a trigger for you is that you're around people, you're around a lot of stimulation, you're a lot of distractions, a lot going on, and this can lead you to feel anxious, to feel ungrounded. I know when I'm traveling and I'm out of my environment and I'm constantly around people, I don't feel the most grounded and centered and focused. And that's also the time where I notice myself going to my phone more, scrolling more, because I want to feel better and I want to feel a sense of regulation, even though I know consciously that scrolling on my phone is not going to help in the long term. And obviously I'm aware of that and I'm working through that. But I do notice that when I'm traveling and I'm around people and I'm out of my environment, I'm more dysregulated. I'm more in survival mode than I am in creation mode and in connection mode. So there is a correlation there. And so for you, that might be your way of coping and your way of feeling grounded, or your nervous system trying to feel grounded, is to eat or to drink. So pay attention. That might be one of the things for you is dysregulation. Maybe, maybe not. Another challenge or trigger for you might be FOMO. Maybe there's this thought process in your mind that this is the only time where I can eat these types of foods. Maybe there's certain foods that you only eat during the holidays, and your mind is thinking, well, I'm not going to be able to eat this until 12 months from now. So might as well eat as much as I can, even if it makes me feel like crap, because I won't be able to have it until next year. So that can be a very real thing, is a sense of FOMO. And of course, if you have that, then you're going to end up eating beyond fullness. Another trigger for you might be Last Supper eating. So maybe subconsciously you're already thinking, okay, once January hits, I'm going to get back on track. I'm going to start dieting. I'm going to lose the weight that I gained over the holidays. So I'm just going to turn that switch off during the holidays leading up to it. and I'm going to eat as much as I possibly can because come January, I'm going to have to give up all of these foods. So that could be another one for you. Another trigger, and this is the last example I'll give you, but I'm hope that you're starting to get a sense of what are some of the things that might come up for you. So the last thing that might be a trigger for you is maybe, and I did this, and this is a very common one, maybe you save up your calories. So you're going to a Christmas dinner and you know that you want to be able to enjoy the food and you want to be able to eat a lot. So you eat less during the day. Maybe you eat less carbs. Maybe you skip certain meals. Maybe you're not necessarily saving up calories, but you are over-exercising in the morning. This was a big one for me as well. I would do like these crazy intense workouts to burn as many calories as I can so that I could, quote unquote, earn my meal at night. So maybe you're noticing that you're actually eating less during the day, under eating, undernourishing yourself. And then you get to these events and these situations where there's a lot of food and your body is starving. It is undernourished and it just wants food. And so you're basically setting yourself up for binge eating. So the first thing that you want to do is get clear on what's a trigger for you and some prompts to help you get into that reflective state is what are some of the habits or behaviors or things that I do during the day? What are some of the things that I'm thinking? And this could be very subconsciously, right? So really allow yourself to dig deep. What am I telling myself when I'm overeating? Or what are my expectations about what's going to happen next? What am I feeling? How am I thinking? So ask yourself these questions, get really curious. And when you think that you have wrote it all down, ask yourself, is there one more thing? Is there one more thing? Like I said, there's going to be more than one. And basically what you're doing here is you are diagnosing the root cause. And that's what this is all about. That's how you finally heal and you break these patterns. So that is step one. Then step two is you're going to ask yourself, and I recommend that you're still doing this while you're journaling, is how can I set myself up for success? So now that you have an idea of what are your specific triggers and challenges, you're going to ask yourself, what can I do to set myself up for success by addressing each of these triggers and challenges? So for example, let's say one of your triggers are that you do save up calories during the day, or you do try to earn your food. Well, maybe how you set yourself up for success is that you make sure that you eat consistently, you eat enough, you don't change the way you eat leading up to a big meal, that you are making sure that you are not going into these big meals famished. Because think of a pendulum. Okay, the more you pull a pendulum one way, and so let's say we're pulling that pendulum towards hungry, very, very hungry, starving. So you're pulling it all the way to one direction. What do you think is going to happen when you start eating? Well, it's going to swing to the opposite and equal level on the other side. So if you were really, really starving on one end, when you swing the pendulum to the other side, you are so much more likely to overeat. This is not because you're lacking willpower, that you're lacking discipline, or there's something wrong with you. This is just biology. Going back to Luke to use as an example, and he gives me permission to share all of this. I would never share anything without his permission. But when we started diagnosing the root causes of why he was struggling with overeating and cravings, one of the things that we found was that he simply was not eating enough during the day. And he thought that he was, but then when he really started thinking about it, he's like, I do have my last meal or snack at like 4 p.m., but then I go to jujitsu and I don't eat for like 4 hours, and I do a workout and I walk home, and then I eat dinner and I'm starving. So I end up overeating. This isn't because he's like doomed to binge eat and overeat for the rest of his life. It's just because he wasn't eating enough during the day. So then we did a few little adjustments. I gave him some advice on things that he could do to support himself. Now it's been, I think, a week and a half where he's been a lot more intentional about feeding his body enough during the day. And he's no longer overeating at night. And he feels so much more control, intentional, and mindful with what he's eating at night. And he feels so much better. So going back to that second step, what can you do to set yourself up for success? Another example might be to communicate your intention with your partner or with someone in your life. Or if you have a coach, if you're one of my members inside of Food Freedom Academy, you know the power of speaking your intentions out and sharing it with the other members of our group. Like, it's so interesting to see what happens when you share what your goal is out loud with someone else. You make it 65% more likely that you're actually going to follow through on it. I'll give you a really recent example for myself. Last night, Luke and I do date nights once a week. And I told him, I was like, I really want to make it a goal for myself to stop checking my emails after 5 p.m. I don't need to be checking my work emails at night. I'm not going to be working. I'm not going to be answering them. And so it's just creating more stress for me for no reason, but it's become such a habit that I shared it with him. I said, this is my goal. I want to stop doing it. And then like an hour later, after I shared it with him out loud, I noticed that because my brain was really like, it was on autopilot for me to check my emails, my brain was like, you should check your emails. But then I remembered, no, I just shared with Luke that I'm not going to do that anymore. So I didn't. And then it happened an hour later, you should check your emails. But I was like, no, I shared and I said that I'm not going to do that anymore. So I didn't. And I didn't end up checking my emails at all last night. And I know that I'm not going to check my emails tonight or tomorrow night because there is something that happens in your mind, this like shared collective, when you speak your goals and your intentions out loud. So maybe setting yourself up for success would look like you tell your partner or your sister or someone that you trust and feel safe around what your intention is. Maybe it's, hey, babe, my intention for tonight's dinner is to be really mindful, to slow down, and to be intentional with what I put into my body. This does not mean you're not going to allow yourself to enjoy food, right? Like you can still be mindful and intentional while having the mashed potatoes and the piece of pie. Being mindful and intentional does not equate restriction, not at all. But when you are eating something, you are doing it because you chose to, not because you're operating on autopilot or you're trying to numb yourself. It's really a conscious decision. So you might notice that by sharing that with your partner, there's something that happens within you that it becomes more concrete and you are able to follow through on it more. So that's another example of how you can set yourself up for success. So that's the second step. And notice how what I'm doing in this episode, I am focusing more on strategy than I am on tactics, Because sure, I could do a full episode on tactics, on things that you can do, like make sure you plate your food, make sure you slow down, try to put your fork down between each bite. Like I could spend an hour and a half giving you all of these different tactics. And sure, that would be helpful. But you know what would happen? You would feel overwhelmed and it would probably go right above your head. And I find it more valuable to teach you strategy because a strategy is a long-term plan, whereas tactics are short-term actions. And I really want to set you up for long-term success so that you can use this in the future when you're going on vacation, when you have another challenge in a different area of your life. So it's much more valuable for me to share this strategy with you. And then you get to come up with the tactics that are going to support you based off of your specific challenges and triggers. So let's do a little recap. Step 1, get clear on your triggers. Step 2, then you ask yourself, how can I set myself up for success? I'll give you one more example because I can't help it. If dysregulation and using food to numb or self-soothe is one of your triggers, then setting yourself up for success might look like leaving the room when you are noticing yourself getting activated. Maybe someone makes a comment, maybe you're feeling overstimulated, going into the bathroom, going into the bedroom, and having 5 minutes for yourself. Taking a few deep breaths. If you need to go for a walk, go for a walk. And it's becoming aware of what's happening in your body when you are starting to feel dysregulated and then nipping it in the bud right away, instead of letting that build up until eventually you go to sit down for your meal and you just use the food as a way to self-soothe. So that's another example of how you can set yourself up for success. And then the last thing, number 3, the third step you're going to do, you're still in your journal, you're still writing this down, you're still in that reflective state. You are going to script how your night is going to go. Okay? You're going to script how your night is going to go. What I mean by that is most people live life as if life is happening to them. Like they are the bystander, they are in the passenger seat. And as a result, you end up feeling really powerless. And you feel like you're just going to keep repeating the same patterns over and over again because you can't help it and it's how you've always been. I don't live my life this way, and I don't teach my clients to live their life this way, because the reality is you have so much more power to change the patterns in your life than you think. If you see yourself as powerless, then you're going to have learned helplessness, and then you will end up repeating the same pattern because, quote unquote, it's how it's always been. I see myself as being the writer of my life, as being in the driver's seat, the architect. So scripting is to imagine that you are writing a book on how you want your life to go. And you can do this when you are either going on vacation or you're going into a social event and you want to show up differently. So to script how you want to show up during big meals or even just during the holidays as a whole, I usually recommend that you use scripting for like a specific thing. So maybe you know that you have a specific dinner that tends to trigger overeating. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to script how that day is going to go, how you want that day to go, keeping in mind the things that you wrote down in step number 2 about how you can set yourself up for success. So it might be, I wake up in the morning and I eat a nourishing, good breakfast. And you might even want to write down specifics about what you're going to eat to make sure that you're getting your carbs and your proteins and your fats. Like, get as specific as you want it to be and really walk yourself through the entire day. okay, if this person says this and I feel triggered, this is what I'm going to do. And you want to look at, because step 1 and 2 were not just given to you randomly. They were given to you so you know what to anticipate, and then you can write down what you will do instead. The problem that most people have is they don't do this. They don't ask themselves, how do I want to respond differently? How do I want to show up differently? What will I do differently? And then what happens is, in the moment, something happens, or they're distracted, they're overwhelmed, they're overstimulated, and our brain in that moment is going to default to our automatic patterns. And if you're used to eating or drinking or numbing yourself out, whatever that might be, that's just where you're going to go, because your brain operates on the law of least effort. So I've used this example before, but it really demonstrates this point. I used to go into social events and feel like no one wanted me there, and feel like it was a pity invite and no one wanted to talk to me. And this obviously stemmed from some stuff growing up. And a few years ago, I just didn't want to feel that way anymore. I wanted to go into social events and feel wanted, and feel like people actually wanted to have conversations with me and were excited to see me. And the thing is that I brought different energy. If I went into a room and didn't think people wanted me there, of course I'm going to talk less. My energy is going to be more introverted. And then as a result, people aren't going to want to talk to me as much. And then I'm going to feel uncomfortable. I'm going to feel awkward. I'm going to feel unwanted. Versus if I were to show up in a room and I feel like people have been waiting for me to come and so excited for me to arrive, I'm going to show up with a different energy. I'm going to be more extroverted. I'm going to be more welcoming. I'm going to be more talkative. So what I would start doing is I would notice myself getting nervous or anxious about going somewhere. And then I would have a little sit down with myself, and I'd say, this is how I want to show up. And I would rehearse it in my mind. Basically, I would script how the night would go, how I wanted the night to go. So then what would happen is my brain had already seen it. And so I guess you could see scripting and visualizing as two sides of the same coin. You're doing the same thing, scripting, you're writing it down, versus visualizing, your seed in your mind. So if scripting doesn't feel aligned with you, maybe visualizing how the day goes will be just as helpful, if not more. I used to be an athlete. I used to be a synchronized swimmer. And so I would visualize all the time. When I was about to go in the water, we would sit down, I would close my eyes, and then I would visualize what are some of the corrections that I want to focus on. What are the things that I want to do differently? So that kind of became my way of thinking, is to visualize how I want to do things differently. So the third step, now that you know what your triggers are, and now that you know how to set yourself up for success, is to visualize or script yourself doing it. So you are showing your brain the plan and the scenario ahead of time, so that when you actually get there, your brain doesn't know the difference between what is real and what is imagined. So when you get there, you already know what to do. It's already been rehearsed. It's already been written down in your mind. And so you are less likely to fall back into automatic behaviors like restricting or overeating and using food to cope. So those are the 3 steps I really encourage you to take if you are feeling any kind of anxiety or fear going into the holidays. 1, get clear on what triggers you. 2, ask yourself how you can set yourself up for success. And then 3, script how you're going to show up differently, or you can also visualize it depending on what feels more aligned for you. I am telling you, Not everyone who listens to this is going to do it because it requires a little bit more work, a little bit more brain power. But those of you who take the time to do this, it might take 30 minutes, it might take an hour, but isn't that hour worth it if you can experience more calm, more peace, more freedom, and enjoy your holidays more without overeating or feeling anxious and controlled by food? I don't know, I think it's worth it to take that hour. So I really recommend that you do it. If you do this, please send me a DM on Instagram. Let me know you did it. Let me know how it goes. If you have any questions about this process, you can also ask me. My DMs are open and I love getting messages from you. I love having conversation with our listeners. So I hope that this was helpful. I so believe in you. I believe in your ability to create a different experience with food this holiday season. And I am here to support you. I got you. Make sure you stay tuned for the announcement about my Food Freedom Experience, my event that I'm going to be hosting virtually in January. And stay tuned for any details around that. If you are like 2026 is the year I heal my relationship with food, I end this battle with binge eating and yo-yo dieting once and for all. So stay tuned for that. I love you so, so much. And I will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magna Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.